All right, so we're picking back up with number 21 now. And if you look at this one, you'll notice right away, okay, the notes look different. Those X's just mean slap, right? Which, to review, is spreading your fingers apart at the edge. We want a more lively, strident, piercing sound as much as you can get on your instrument. And if you look at the rhythms, we've mixed them and matched them. There's a little bit of scrambling going on, but there's still whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes, but they're mixed in a little bit. So let's use those same counts, and let's do number 21. And again, if you can see if you're doing this on a bell, you would use just an open high sound, right? Unmuted. If you're doing this on a shaker, just you're not going to be able to differentiate high from low in the first place for the most part, unless you want to show me how you do it, and in which case I can show the rest of the class. But in this case, just make sure that you're getting a clear rhythm, clear starting place of your rhythm, and counting the whole time. The counting part is the most important part right now. Secondary, for those of you practicing on your drum at the moment, it's going to be about getting your strokes differentiated. So number 21, let's take a look at it. Make sure your eye stays on the page and that your eye is moving a little bit ahead of your hand. Here we go. 1, 2, 21, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice it's a little bit louder, right? That's one way that you can differentiate those, think of these almost as accents. And you notice that there's eighth notes and a quarter note at the very end of that last bar. So I always like to mix in, especially towards the end. I wrote this book specifically to make sure that everybody doesn't coast. So as you're reading it, make sure towards the end that you don't start to fall in the, oh, I see the pattern, because that's exactly what I'm going to try and break the pattern. So make sure you keep your focus going. Okay. So now, look at 22. So each measure contains all three strokes. Bass, tone, slap. Bass, tone, slap. Right? So we want low, medium, high, or thud, short, long. Those are other ways that we can differentiate them. If you're having difficulty doing this, at least make sure that you're doing center for the low, and not center for the rest of it, on the edge for the rest of it. And if your slaps and your tones sound a little bit the same, it's okay. But you can differentiate them at least by your finger position, as much as you can remember, and by playing the slaps maybe a little bit louder, right, to get an accent. So if we go through and we're going to try and alternate hands as much as possible to get both hands involved in the movement. But if you find a combination that works for you and that you're not just doing it all in one hand, and therefore you'll be able to play it faster because both hands will be used a little bit more evenly, then you can find it. If you find a combination that works for you, go ahead and do that. But let's go through and left to right, number 22, and I want you to name the type of note as I mention it. So, for example, I'll do the first measure. Of 22. Beat 1, bass. Beat 2, rest. Beat 3, tone. Beat 4 and, those are 2 slaps. So now, and just making sure that if you're not sure about the counts, refer back up to the earlier ones, 19, 20, and 21, and see if you can put all of those eighth note counts in there. So each eighth note receives 1 and 2 and 3. They each get one of those syllables. A quarter note will get 1 and. It'll get 2 syllables because a quarter note is twice as long. A half note will get 4 syllables. 1 and 2 and. 4 eighth notes, right? If we're using eighth notes as syllables. Well, how many eighths are there in a half? If we're going back to fractions, everybody here is a college student at least, so you should be able to do that fairly quickly. How many eighths in a half? 4, right? And then, there are no whole notes in this one, so we don't need to know that. So, second measure, beat 1 and 2 is a, say it, bass. Beat 3 is a tone. 4 and, slap, slap. Say it in between, like before I answer it. See if you can beat me to the answer. Say it out loud, because that way it counts. If you don't only say it in your head, you can kind of talk yourself into saying, oh, I knew what that was. Don't do that. All right? Measure 3 of 22. Again, we're talking through this note at a time. Beat 1, bass. Beat 2, rest. Beat 3, tone. Beat 4, 4 and, slap, slap. So far the same. But that one, if you notice, the stems, the direction of the vertical lines are going down. That doesn't change anything. It's just a way to make music fit on a page a little bit differently. So I put deliberately in here 2 different ways to show you, because depending on how the music lays on the page, to save space and to make it not look all cramped, sometimes the stems will go up, sometimes they'll go down, right? And measure 4, bass, I'm going to go quick, for beats 1 and 2, 3 and on the tone. This time we get 8th notes earlier, and beat 4 is a single slap. So we're going to do line number 22. We're going to do it a couple times. I'll put a little break in there. See if you can get all the targets, right? See if you can use both your hands as evenly as possible. If you favor your right hand, or if you're right-handed a little bit more, that's totally fine. But try and involve both hands as evenly as possible. So this, basically, this unit is a little bit extra drum technique, and it's also introducing new rhythms. But the more time you spend on the drum, the better, right? Also, is your drum tilted? If it's not, tilt it now. So, number 22. Counting and playing. 1 and 2 and ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 1 and 2, 3 and 4. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Right. Now, if that went a little quick for you, go back, do it again, use the YouTube desktop custom playback speed, and slow it down until you can do it comfortably, all right? And then gradually speed it back up. But go back and do that again. We're going to do it again now at 22. We're going to do it twice in a row. Twice in a row. 1, 2, ready and go. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 Again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And 1 and 2. Tone, slap, slap, bass. 2. Tone, slap, slap, bass. 2. Tone, tone, slap. Right? Again, if you need to do that again, rewind it, play it back. If you need to slow it down, in 5% increments, probably you can go down to like 0.85 playback speed. And again, this the phones don't let you do this, but desktop, if you're using Safari or you're using Chrome on a desktop, they'll let you do this if you go into the YouTube options. So if that was too fast, you can probably slow it down to about 0.85 of the playback speed, and it'll still be decent enough audio quality. As you slow it down a little bit more, you start to kind of hear the pixels of the sound, if that makes sense. Like the resolution, it's like you're zooming in too much to a digital picture, and you can start to see the pixels. When you slow the audio down, it's kind of like zooming in, and you can hear how the sound has been chopped up into its bits. So something also to be aware of if you ever end up doing any audio editing. It's a little aside. All right. So, question, why do you think bass and tone strokes, the note heads specifically, right, the circle part or the X part, are notated in different places on the staff, but tones and slaps are notated in the same place? I'm going to say that question again. This is the question on the page. Why do you think bass and tone, are notated in different places on the staff, but tones and slaps, tone, slap, dry, wet, are notated in the same place? Think about it for a second. But don't think about it without doing it a couple times. Say bass, tone, and then tone, slide. Think about that answer. Pause the video if you need to think about it for a second. Come up with your own answer. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to get a good answer that's thought through on your own. I'm going to answer it in 3, 2, 1. The idea is that it helps reflect where on the drum you're playing. So if you're out at the edge, well, that note head is in the same place whether your hands are doing fingers together or fingers apart. So that's just a way to help indicate, like, all right, it's not as different as if you have to reach out for that. Okay. And let's go over to Etude number 24. So we have a mix. Now we're fully mixing quarter notes and eighth notes. And at this point, it should start to, like, I don't know about you, if you've never read music before, but this page might be the page where it starts to quote unquote look like real music. Like it starts to look like, oh, there's some stuff going on. There's variety. And so if you're getting any of that vibe, yeah, that might be something that's good for you. If you are kind of puzzled by this, make sure that you write in as many counts as you need to play this properly. Because the point of this class is not to learn how to read music. We're learning to read music in order to be able to better and more quickly grasp certain rhythms and rhythmic concepts. And the best way to understand things sometimes is to be able to read them, so it gives you a framework for thinking about them. But ultimately, my only goal for you is that you're able to play and understand these. So if you need to scribble out every single count, go ahead, right? If you need to print out the book and write it in, if you need to type in counts and write and look at those, that's fine. The only dangerous part is you do want to make sure that you check them, because you could inadvertently end up practicing the wrong thing. Okay, so for the etude, count it out loud, even if you can only do a few notes at first. Let's say number 24, you can count the first 3 notes and then you kind of lost. Okay, so count the first 3 notes. And the next time, see if you can get another couple notes in there, right? It's not about all or nothing. It's about all or something, right? Just do something. Make sure that you are able to get something in there. So build on it. Whatever you can do, if you can do everything, great. If you can do almost everything, then the next time do a little bit more and a little bit more. You guys are not strangers to that concept of building on skills, right? Now, another thing to look at is each line of number 24 is a different sound. So the first line of 24, and we're going to break these down and do them one line at a time. The first line of 24 is all bass. If you can notice that the note heads are at the bottom space. The second line of 24 is all tone strokes, so out at the edge, fingers closed. The third line is all slaps, out at the edge, fingers open. And then, if you look at the fourth and fifth lines, we start to mix in, it's instead of 4 bars per sound, it's now 2 bars per sound. And we do that for the fourth line and the first 2 measures of the fifth line. And then the last 2 measures, remember what I said earlier, that be on the lookout for some surprises towards the end, to make sure that you've been looking ahead and that your attention hasn't kind of lapsed into, oh, I know what's coming. You don't necessarily, right? So keep your wits about you. So the last 2 measures, it mixes it up a little bit more. Again, make sure that you're looking ahead a little bit. If you're riding your bike, you're not staring at the pedals, at the ground that you're riding over at the moment, right? You're looking down the street. If you're walking down the street, you're not looking at your feet. You're going to bump into somebody, or you're going to walk into traffic or something like that. So same idea. Don't walk into traffic, musically speaking. Now, another question, and this is a question to consider for after we do this, but I'll ask it ahead of time. Do you see any embedded patterns, like, in other words, moments of mild predictability that will kind of ease you into the next thing, because you're like, oh yeah, it's working by some kind of system. Music very commonly does that. Some sort of predictable type of repetition, but is not a perfect repetition. Or any kind of symmetry, right? It's same on this side and this side, that helps basically guide your expectations. So even if you don't nail it the first time, you go, oh, I see what he's doing here, and you can get it the second time. Okay? So, number 24, we're going to do one line at a time. And again, use the video, take note of the time for each line, and I'll remind you as I do it, in case you want to go back and do that line again. So we're going to do each line individually, and then I'm going to put them all together. This is still at 84 beats per minute. Here we go. 1, 2, first line, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to do it again, not counting this time. 1, 2, ready, count. Next line, 2, ready, count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, ready, count. Third line, 2, ready, count. 4 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to count the first part since I left it out. Here. Third line, 1, 2, ready, count. 1.